All right, here we go. The latest edition of Deals and Deadlines with our super agent Hadley Engelhardt. I'm Matt Chernoff. Our sports business podcast fun begins right now. I will remind you, and I'll do it several times, if you're new to us, thank you for finding us. You can hear us on any podcast feed. Just search Deals and Deadlines. New episodes drop each and every Friday, and you can watch this on our 680 The Fan YouTube channel. All right, Hadley, we got a lot to discuss as the NBA playoffs start making our way to the NBA Finals. We've said many times the TV game is an interesting one when it comes to brands and sports. And I think the NBA is different than the NFL, where the NFL could have itty-bitty Green Bay, huge LA. They're going to get the same ratings in the big games. We're at a point now where the NBA is craving the New York Knicks to try to get to the NBA Finals. And as we record this, they're down 3-1 to the Indiana Pacers. The reason I bring it up, the ratings for the Knicks-Pacers series have been very good. Some of the biggest numbers the league has seen since 2019. It will not shock you to know OKC, Minnesota, ratings haven't been good. So there is a world where an OKC versus Indiana NBA Finals would be a disaster for all involved.
Yeah, so let's put it in real numbers. So when the Knicks are involved, or any New York franchise in any sport are involved, ratings go way up. They're all, New York, LA, Chicago even, are the big markets. And so the NBA, and I've talked to some NBA executives about this, I mean, it's great basketball, but unless you're a true NBA fan and you're just a casual fan watching the game, if the Knicks are not in it, it's going to affect the ratings. And you talked about this, and I kind of did some research on this. Looking at the numbers here, the impact that the Knicks have on the playoffs, that market alone in the playoffs this year has created $195 million. Big numbers. Their NBA, their game one, broke records since 2018. So, again, New York being in it, they're expecting the numbers, if it is OKC and Indiana, to be less than what the Knicks are doing in the Eastern Conference Finals. So, and, the Knicks don't even have a real household name player that people talk about, future of star of the NBA. You got Brunson, but nothing that is, talked about amongst the average fan. And so it just shows you the power that New York brings to sports.
So a couple of things with the Knicks, right? You can hate watch them. A fan can do that. So it doesn't matter why you watch. You can love or hate the way you do it. But I think it leads perfectly into this next discussion. I don't know if you saw this. Kendrick Perkins on ESPN was talking about one of the two conference finals. In this case, it was Minnesota trying to stay alive in their matchup with OKC. And he brought up Anthony Edwards and this whole notion that the networks are pushing Anthony Edwards as the face of the league. And Kendrick Perkins said, you have to be a family man, married with kids, to be the face of the league. He said, you got to check the boxes when you're that face. Things outside the lines matter. He said, now, if you go down the list of all the faces of the league in the history of the game, Larry, Magic, Michael, Kobe, Shaq, LeBron, Steph, what did they all have in common? While they were playing in the league, they were all family men, all married with kids. Anthony Edwards, not married, they're kids, but he's not married. Is that fair? You're the agent. You're looking at the branding deals. Is that a fair statement?
Well, first of all, it's not fair to Anthony. Anthony is not 30, 32 years old. He's a young man. He's in his early 20s. And so he's not there yet. I mean, I wouldn't expect him to be married at this age. So it's not fair to him. He is the future of the NBA. Let's not forget, he is an amazing player. He's Michael Jordan-esque. And so we're rooting for him to become that player. Now, will he be that role model? Will he get married and settle down? Or will he do crazy things and just be the player that he is and want to do the things? That's today's world. And so we may not see that. I'm not sure those players you mentioned would be on that path with today's social media and the availability to have access to these players 24/7, where there is no private life anymore. So, it's not fair to Anthony Edwards. I think he is the future face of the NBA. I think there's a lot of faces, but I think he is the future star of the NBA.
So I think there's a bigger discussion here, and I always think back to a time when Michael Jordan was phasing out. It was the league's worst nightmare. How do you replace the face of all time in the league of Michael Jordan? Allen Iverson tried to assume the role for a couple of years. And it's funny we're having the discussion today of you have to be married, you have to have kids. In this time in the early 2000s, he was tatted up. He didn't have the look. He didn't have the marketing look that Michael Jordan had. So that was a big thing. David Stern. You remember David Stern? He was having guys cover up tattoos. He was trying to do things to make them more brandable.
And I think we talked about this. The last 8 NBA MVPs don't have tattoos.
Which is hilarious that we keep track of that. But yes.
No, but you're talking about that, the image. So It's kind of ironic that we have the elite players each year that aren't fitting that mold.
We go from that early 2000s of AI, does he fit that mold, to today you have Kendrick going, you have to be married with kids. I don't know. I would think 2025 is a very different feel to it. So there's like a societal discussion, but just in the NBA discussion, it's so hard to force a face of the league. Know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
but
Kobe became the face because it happened organically. Steph became it because it happened organically. I think the world of Anthony Edwards, I think the face of the league happens when you get on the championship stage. You win titles. You organically do it. I don't think you could push anybody into this face of the league, whether their brand off the court or not fits.
Yeah, but at the same time, you look at these other players you mentioned. They were all in big markets. Anthony Edwards is in Minnesota, not the biggest market there is. But he is the future of the game. He does so many things well. But again, he's young, and he may not want to change that image. He may not want to settle down. He may want to be the guy that he is and do the crazy things that he does. So it's, he's weighing it. I think the NBA is looking at, all right, who are our marquee players? And let's push the narrative of who those players are, because they are the future. And you have to acknowledge that he is the future player of the NBA. One of them, at least.
Let me push back, though, in one respect. LeBron's different than everybody. I get it. He was in Cleveland. Shaq was in Little Orlando. Now, both left. You could argue LeBron, before he took over the full face of the league, he left. He goes to Miami, and all of a sudden the brand gets bigger. Shaq leaves Little Orlando, goes to L.A. There is a world where Anthony Edwards at some point leaves Minnesota and goes to one of those bigger brands that goes along with his individual branding, and he gets that title as well.
And listen, we see it happening all the time. And they're kind of, I wouldn't say force-feeding us Anthony Edwards, because I think he deserves it.
He's fantastic.
But I think it's short-term, because if Cooper Flagg becomes the player everyone thinks he's going to become, and he's in Dallas, all of a sudden he becomes one of the faces. And if he does things the right way, I think he becomes the future face of the NBA.
I think Victor Wembanyama is also one to watch, just because he's such an anomaly of his size and the way he can do it, but he's also in Little San Antonio, so you have to weigh that one. Okay, speaking of brand, we know what Caitlin Clark's brand is. We can have a discussion about how good a player is, who's the best player in any league. Remove that for a second when we get to Caitlin Clark. I don't know that we've ever seen somebody with the impact when it comes to brand and business the way Caitlin has impacted the WNBA. And here's another example. She's now dealing with an injury where she's going to miss 4 or 5 games, a few road games. Ticket prices on the secondary market when the injury was made public that she's going to miss a couple of road games, for example, the Indiana Fever are going to play the Chicago Sky. Tickets were going for about $86 on average a piece. Well, 48 hours after the injury, they're down to $25.
So you mean Angel Reese doesn't bring in the big money that she?
I mean, she's a fantastic player, but Caitlin, we saw this in Atlanta. So the Fever came here and they played at State Farm Arena. All these teams are moving their games to NBA arenas.
For Caitlin, not
for Caitlin. Games. Sure,
correct.
Chicago did it the same. They were moving it to the United Center. The Washington team moved theirs to an NBA arena as well. She affects something. Hadley, you've done this longer than I have. I'm trying to come up with a comp where it affects. Like it happened in the NBA with Michael, I guess. The NFL, maybe it's Mahomes. I don't know, but I'm trying to come up with somebody who affects the bottom line, TV, ticket prices, moving buildings more than this person.
Yeah, well, obviously the NBA, they're not moving buildings. They're already in the big building. But there are a number of players from Magic to Larry, when they would go on the road, no matter who they were playing, it would sell out. There was no doubt about it. You don't see it as much in the NFL. You do see it some with baseball, with the big names, when there was the home run and McGuire and Sosa and things like that, that have really affected it. Caitlin Clark is taking a sport that has been in existence, the WNBA, for a number of years. I've worked with some coaches and players over the course of my career, and it was an afterthought. Negotiating was kind of a joke. There really wasn't much to negotiate. We are now talking about the WNBA, but it goes on par with Caitlin Clark. And without her and what she has done, we wouldn't be having these conversations. And it's great for the game. It's the New York Liberty is building a new facility now. Right. I mean, the game is taking off. And what I am disappointed is that the WNBA as a whole, players, are not embracing Caitlin Clark and acknowledging what she is bringing to the game and realizing how much it's going to benefit them. Sort of what golf happened with Tiger.
I was thinking to say, this is Tiger Woods-esque.
Correct.
Yeah.
And Tiger, all these golfers that I've talked to and some of them I've worked with, love Tiger, because even though they're competing against him and they want to win, don't want him to win, they understand that at the end of the day, he brings more viewership, he brings more money, which in turn gives them more opportunities. Why the WNBA as a whole isn't embracing Caitlin Clark and acknowledging what she has done and how she's changed in the game is amazing to me. But she changes ticket prices. She changes venues. I mean, it's truly amazing to see what she's doing.
She's created a TV package that wasn't there before, so it really is remarkable. All right, coming up, we're going to talk about several big-name NFL players skipping OTAs. A negotiating ploy, or they just want the summer off. Plus, Tom Brady's making a big investment that we have to talk about, and there's a big name who could be on the trade market in the NFL. We'll talk about those topics next. All right, we continue with this episode of Deals and Deadlines with Hadley. I'm Matt. We thank you guys for hanging out with us again. Subscribe, do it. You can subscribe on any podcast platform. Just search up Deals and Deadlines. Again, you can hear us on the 680 The Fan, or see us on the 680 The Fan YouTube channel. New episodes drop each and every Friday. All right, Mr. Hadley, a couple of things we need to discuss here. OTAs are going on, voluntary OTAs around the NFL, but we have some big names who have decided to sit them out. Not a huge deal, but this is the beginning of negotiating time where it's like, we might not be thrilled with our deal. It's not a point where we're missing something that is mandated, but we're letting you know that we're not thrilled. Hassan Reddick in Tampa. This is not the first time he's gone through this rodeo with a couple of teams. James Cook is going through it. Kirk Cousins is not at Falcon OTAs, but that's not for a contract. That's because he wants to be traded. So you as the agent, tell me what this time of year with the player who decides to skip OTAs, what kind of attention does that grab for the GM and the team to notice what's happening now?
Well, let's talk about OTAs. Stand for Organized Team Activities. They call it volunteer camps, but in reality, it's part of the offseason program. Every player is expected to be there, even though you're not mandatory supposed to be there. These cases that you brought up are 3 different cases. Kirk Cousins first. That has nothing to do with him holding out or anything. This is they're actually happy he's not there in a way, because it lets them focus on the current team. If he were to get injured, it would create other problems. So that's kind of, I believe, a mutual thing, and a trade of something that probably will happen in the future with other quarterback issues going on. And Aaron Rodgers is part of that equation. So let's call it James Cook. No surprise, right? He's already missed a bunch of stuff. He's gone public. He stopped following the Bills on social media. That's part of his and his team's negotiating ploy. Not sure it's working in his favor, but it's part of their ploy. The interesting one is Hassan Reddick. Hassan Reddick, we had this problem last year. He did a trade. He acknowledged the trade, and then he held out with the Jets. It was a big mess. In March of this year, just 3 months ago, he signs a new 1-year deal with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Of that, 10 of the $14 million or 10 of the $12 million has already been paid. And now he wasn't at the first OTA. Now, he may have had a real excuse, wasn't there, they knew he wouldn't be there, no big deal. Or if it is part of him holding out, he's not happy, he just signed it, it'd be shame on him, because they've paid him all this money. They've already gone through this. There's no doubt they had these conversations about what happened last year. Tampa didn't want to go down that road and said, hey, are these numbers good for you? It's a 1-year deal. It's a make-good contract. You play the whole year. We'll revisit doing an extension at a later date, or you'll become a free agent next year. He turns 31, I believe, this fall. So still in the range where he could sign a multi-year deal. I'm curious to see how this one plays out. Until we have all the details on why he missed it, or if he misses all of them, it'll be interesting, because if it is about money, he just signed it in mid-March.
He also showed he was willing to miss games a year ago. I mean, that
was with a new team. He was traded, and he didn't agree with them, even though they had some conversations about the deal.
I guess my point on it is, if I'm Tampa, you went into this with eyes wide open. Even though you gave him a 1-year deal with the guarantees.
Buyer beware. Yeah. There's no doubt about it. And I hope that's not the case, because if that's the case and he does this, he may be blackballed from the league. And even though teams can tortiously do that, I know if I was a GM and he's done this once, now he's done this twice, no doubt I would not.
Sounds like to me, Hadley just brought up collusion, but I'm not going to get into that. Okay, let's talk about the rumors around Jalen Ramsey. Apparently this is going to happen, the split with the Dolphins and Ramsey, a divorce is on the way. Adam Schefter said, and he used the term, there's more trade interest than people realize. We know the Falcons could be a team interested. There's a Raheem Morris, Jalen Ramsey tie, the Rams where he used to play. So those things could all be a possibility. The money's going to be a sunken cost for mostly Miami in this case, right? But if you're doing a deal even with an older Jalen, is he going to want a new deal? Or like, what would that look like if you're giving up a 4th or 5th round pick? Is he going to pick where he goes? How does that work when you're negotiating a potential out of Miami if you're his agent?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of factors there. Is he unhappy in Miami? He just wants to go elsewhere under the current deal, or I'm unhappy with Miami and I'd like to do an extension. I don't see, I mean, if Atlanta does it, Atlanta's not a Super Bowl contending team. I think it's better off for a team that is vying for a championship to bring in a piece like Jalen Ramsey, but it's got to be a cap-friendly, cash-friendly deal to make it work for all parties. And again, I don't know where Jalen is in his career. Is it only about the money? Will he go to whatever market was willing to pay him the most money? The best thing a team could do is trade for him and do an extension that works for the team. But again, you see how players hold out. Doesn't mean he does the trade, accepts an extension, and a year later is a holdout himself.
Well, the odd part about it, everything you described was supposed to be the reason he went to Miami.
Correct.
It's the reason he went to L.A. So Miami very quickly fell out of we're a Super Bowl contender to now we're trying to figure out where we fit in the pecking order around the league. And it's Florida. It's the break on income tax. Like, you get all those things. It's a great place to live. You're on the water and all. Sounds like
well, he was going there. Obviously, everyone talked about a year ago that this was a team that was a potential Super Bowl team, definitely a high-end playoff team. A year from now, we may have a new GM, a new coach, a new quarterback. We may have a whole mess there. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. And Jalen seems to always be in the thick of things when he was in L.A. and now in Miami. And so love to see how this thing plays out with him. All
right, talk to me about Tom Brady, who I imagine this isn't a sports agent he deals with. He has a business manager.
Correct.
When he's doing investment opportunities, he joined an $18 million funding round in a Boston-based crypto-adjacent commerce startup. This is not the first time.
Are you saying Brady and crypto?
I know. Well, this isn't the first time Brady's gotten into this. He got burned pretty badly when he started promoting FTX, but he still believes in the future of crypto.
Correct.
Again, this isn't Hadley sitting down with him. There's a business manager who says, here are the ins and outs. I feel like, though, and I'm not comparing, so don't laugh at this. We just had this controversy with your friend, the Hawktua girl, who was promoting Bitcoin. I feel like I don't know if these people know enough about this, because I think crypto and the whole Bitcoin thing confuses the hell out of people. They see the potential of the big dollars. I'm sure Brady's vetted this, but the FTX thing would be enough for me to pause.
Yeah, and I have clients of mine, and some of them are very close with Tom, that play with him in New England during their heyday. And Tom has approached them about some of these deals, and more times than not, they've stayed away from it just because it's getting so much visibility that if it goes south like FTX, they're now brought into it. So you've got to weigh it. Obviously, Tom and his business people feel it is the future to some degree of our finances, and to be at the forefront is what he envisions, and that's why he partnered with FTX, and I guess that's why he may partner with this Boston-based company. But it'll be very interesting to see what Tom does moving forward.
This doesn't feel like a money grab. He's got all the money in the world for 17 generations of Brady's. Is this the competition? Is this how to make something else great? Because I can't believe Tom goes, we made $3 million off this. Like, that $3 million to him is like, Hadley's a bad example.
Yeah, but you keep on saying it's not a money thing. It is a money thing.
But how much does
all
he
these
need?
Billionaires want to make even more money. I mean, that's whether they're in sports or not.
But that's an ego of, I want to make. You've made enough money.
True. I think part of it is ego.
Yeah.
And part of it is just being at the forefront and being a visionary and saying, I was part of this path. I was a trailblazer. And so I think Tom has put part of his money, and again, I don't know how much he's really even investing in these companies, because Tom Brady's name, image, and likeness brings a value to whatever company he endorses. So he may be putting a little of his own money and using more of his image to help the company grow.
The brand equity of Tom Brady brings a lot of attention, which I'm sure he realizes. All right, coming up, we have some college football news we have to talk about. One of the biggest games on the college football schedule was going to be moved to a different time, different day, and you'll understand why, because I think the reasoning behind it's fairly interesting. Plus, the rat race in college football right now. The SEC is controlling a lot of it. We're discussing college football playoff formats, the future of college football in general, and the business of it, which we'll discuss next. All right, we continue with this episode of Deals and Deadlines with Hadley. I'm Matt. I will remind you again, subscribe. Wherever you get your favorite pods, search Deals and Deadlines, or just watch us on the 680 The Fan YouTube channel. Why would you not?
Even if you don't have a favorite pod, we should become your favorite.
That would be nice. I mean, I'll beg. I'm not above it or below it. All right, Hadley, let's talk some college football stuff. One of the biggest games of the college football season is going to happen very early in the season when Texas goes to Columbus to play Ohio State. It was scheduled for a noon Saturday Fox broadcast. Well, then Ohio State wanted to move the game to Sunday night and put it in prime time. But Texas somehow had a say-so in it and put the kibosh on it. And there's a lot of people crying foul on this. Now, I always think the primetime window is better, right, for the ratings, for the branding of the game, all those things. But Fox has done a great job of branding that big noon Saturday. So why do you think Ohio State wanted to move it, and why was Texas fighting it?
Well, first of all, because it's a non-conference game, when you do any of these non-conference scheduling, the teams all have a say-so on certain parameters of the game. And so they agreed on this game would be a noon game, and obviously Fox would broadcast it. Well, Ohio State now wants to move it for whatever reason, why they want to move it. And Texas is saying, no, we want to keep it where it is. What their motive is behind it, I don't know. But I'm glad Texas is doing that because it's a big game. It's agreed to terms, and they don't want to move it another day. They've already planned out their practice scheduling leading up to that game, even though it's in September, but they've already planned it out and what goes on after that. And so they don't want to move it for any other reasons. And the branding, like it used to be, of being in primetime, they don't need it. Texas is its own brand. They have their own channel. You know, they do everything their own way. So it's really about these teams. I love it because now it's two teams arguing with each other, and now it's SEC versus Big Ten.
A little gamesmanship.
100%.
Yeah. And you do have two of the biggest brands in all of college football.
Now,
which is
if
awesome.
Ohio State said to Texas, and they may, hey, we'll give you of the $5 million, we're making numbers up now.
Here's
Let's say
another
they're each
million.
getting $5 million each for this thing. We'll give you $7. We'll take $3.
All of a sudden
you guys
you're
move
moving.
it. You know what? Maybe we'll move it.
We like Sundays. Sundays in the fall.
Sunday night, we're in.
Beautiful. Okay, speaking of college football, the new edition of EA College Football 2026, which is going to be released July 10th. We have cover athletes for it. Ohio State's Jeremiah Smith and Alabama's Ryan Williams. A couple of things jump to mind. We just talked about the brand. Get an Alabama young star, get an Ohio State star, but not quarterbacks, which we've kind of looked ahead. There might be a Arch Manning explosion if he turns out to be as good as the hype is. And there might be a rebuild of Carson Beck's brand in Miami and a few others. I think it's going to be a different sort of year in college football. And this is just kind of an indicator that we have two skill position players on this game, which always is about quarterbacks.
I really was surprised to see it. Not that both these players aren't well-deserving to be on the cover of anything. Both great players, both future high draft choices, both at premium colleges. I really thought Arch Manning is going to be the face. They're going to build Arch Manning as the face until he proves them wrong. And, that first game, that Ohio State-Texas game, is going to be an all-tell-all. And if he does what he's capable of doing, it's going to rebirth Texas as a contender and put him at the top of the food chain. So a little surprised that they did that, but not, again, both guys well-deserving of it. I really thought they were going to stay quarterback, and in this case, not just any quarterback. Mm-hmm. Like, I wouldn't have put a Carson Beck. I don't know where Carson Beck's going to be. I don't know where Miami's going to be. We know Texas is going to be an elite program in the elite conference, and he is going to be the face of college football moving forward.
All right, let's talk about what's going on in the SEC right now because, there's some stuff, right? SEC spring meetings is happening, and you had Greg Sankey, the commissioner, who had a lot to say. First of all, he wants more autonomy for his conference and his individual schools, even taking a little snide remark of why are we still even in the NCAA? Nobody knows who's running the NCAA. Then there's questions about the future of the playoff. We're going to 16 teams, but what's the format going to be? How does it benefit the SEC the most? How do they make sure they get the most teams in? The SEC and the Big Ten are showing they're the most powerful, and they're going to try to flex as much as they can, while these other conferences like the Big 12 and the ACC still want their piece of the pie. I don't know where this ultimately goes, but it's a power struggle right now. We're watching it play out publicly every day.
Yeah, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. By 2030, football will be separate from all other sports, and the SEC will be its own brand by 2030. They are too powerful. Not just football. You look at basketball. They had, how many teams in the Final Four? They won the championship there. They've got more teams in the World Series, in the baseball playoffs. So you see it time and time. Even the women's softball, there's more SEC teams. So they are the dominant conference. They bring in the majority of the money. Their TV deal is amazing. And so by 2030, Greg and company are going to remove football from its other governing bodies, other sports, which affects Title IX, which gives them more money for football and more leverage. And I think the playoff system is going to be changed by 2030 completely. I think it's going to be run by the major conferences, and the NCAA is not going to be part of it anymore.
Do you believe we are going to narrow down to just a couple of conferences where it looks like an AFC, NFC? Because the model of the NFL is being followed by college football, as much as they don't want to acknowledge it, that you have a lot of cooks in this kitchen, right? But the most powerful cook is Greg Sankey in the SEC. The Big Ten is right there, either shoulder to shoulder or nipping on the heels. Are these others going to fall in line where we have a couple of main divisions, or in this case conferences, and everybody else just kind of disappears?
Yeah, I think you're going to have the other conferences involved, the ACCs of the world, the Pac-12, all those conferences will have some sort of say-so, and then you'll have that wild card in there to keep the smaller conferences at bay so they can say, all right, we do have a chance to compete. But it's not going to really be a real tournament. It's going to be the SEC and the Big Ten with some sprinkled in other teams. Just the way it's going, and for anyone to deny that, there's too much money involved, too much power involved. And if they can now work through the NIL and portal and make it some sort of even playing field on top of that, the SEC is going to be so powerful that they're going to be able to dictate where the next chess move is for not just college football, but college sports.
I guess there are a couple of models being discussed in the college football playoff format of the new 16 team that we're looking to get to in 2026. I think if you're the SEC, the most palatable is the 11-5 model, essentially where the SEC knows we're guaranteed whatever 4 teams. But the at-larges, we're going to have as much say in the at-larges as anybody else. I'm a believer, and I know this won't happen, Hadley, that I don't want any automatic qualifiers. I know that sounds odd. I think a 16-team playoff, we over sort of rate the difficulty of trying to put these teams together. The first 13 or 14 will be easy to come up with. There might be arguments of who's the 15 seed, the 16 seed. But my feeling on it is when you have 3 losses, not a bunch of defense you can have for being left out, that if you win your conference, you know you're going to go anyway. So you know you're going to be a high seed. That I think when we lock in automatic qualifiers, you're going to end up, and I think this is Greg Sankey's fear, we're going to lock ourselves out of getting more teams certain years that other teams aren't deserving, and we are because our conference is so good. I would just like to keep it, let's pick up our best 16, full transparency of how we get there, and I think the SEC will benefit.
Yeah, I think they're going to do a hybrid of that, but I'm the only thing I will disagree with you on is I believe if they decide like the SEC champion gets to go, I'm okay with that because then they're playing for something.
But you already know they're going as the SEC
Yeah, but then
champion.
again, you sometimes find somebody that's, on the West that is a good team that for whatever reason has a tiebreaker and is in there.
Let's remember now, they've got rid of divisions.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, but I'm saying the Western teams,
sure,
that may not be there. But you're correct. If you're in this SEC tournament, a championship, you've obviously earned it, and you're going to be in this. But so then what's the downside in saying the winner is automatically in? Because if they're already going to be in anyway, just makes it more exciting for the fans.
I don't disagree. I guess I would say common sense doesn't rule a lot of this, that if you're in the SEC title game and you win it, you're going.
Right.
I don't need to say that. And it's not about the SEC being the automatic qualifier. I'm worried if the year that the ACC doesn't have a great conference and it's a 2 or 3 loss automatic, like why?
I agree with you. So that's where you have to now say, all right, the winner of the major 2 conferences, we'll call it the Big Ten and the SEC, get to go. But again, it keeps football alive. If you have an automatic winner, sort of what happens in college baseball. If you win the tournament, you're automatically in. It knocks teams out.
Yep.
And so if you are a perennial winner of the conference and you don't win it, maybe you don't get into the playoff system that year. So again, I don't think there's a perfect system. We had Eric Palms with the Orange Bowl, several months ago talking about this, and from when he took the job to where there were bowl games and you were vying for teams and there was no guarantee you would have any playoff implications, to some sort of playoffs, to now a 12 team, to now a 16 team, to now the SEC and the Big Ten and other conferences, moving apart. It's amazing how in a short window things have changed drastically, and I think they're going to continue to change again by 2030. I think we're going to have a whole different.
I can believe that. Well, the other part is, are we going to have one transfer portal window? Or are we going to have 2? How are we going to have a better governor on NIL? Like, these things are happening in real time.
Correct.
In a way that are we going to have a collective bargaining agreement at some point?
Are they going to be employees?
Correct.
Are there going to be workers' comp issues? There's so many balls that are being juggled right now that, one at a time they're going to be figured out, or they may happen all at one time as part of a new deal that we're moving football, we're doing these things, and by 2030, I'm giving it 5 years, I think all this will be resolved in some way that we're moving in a positive direction.
I know this much. It gives us something to chew on each and every week. I'll remind you, if you guys would, you could subscribe to Deals and Deadlines on any podcast platform with new episodes dropping each and every Friday, and of course, you can watch it when it comes out on Fridays on our 680 The Fan YouTube channel. Thanks to you guys for joining us. Thanks to Bella for producing us. And we'll talk to you next time on Deals and Deadlines.